Are you tired of feeling stuck? Like life has been on pause for far too long? This audiobook isn't about quick hacks or empty motivation. It's about confronting the real reasons you haven't moved forward. Inside, you'll uncover the truths you've been avoiding, the decisions you've delayed, and the challenges you've pushed aside. Only by facing them head-on can you finally break free and start rising again. Feeling stuck? Give yourself 90 days to rise again. Chapter 1. Face what you've been avoiding. If you've been feeling stuck for months or years, there's probably one thing you refuse to look at, one conversation you won't have, one truth you won't face, one monster hiding in your basement that's getting bigger every day. You ignore it. This isn't another pep talk about motivation. This is about the hard reality that you can't rise until you stop running from what's holding you down. It's sitting there right now, in the back of your mind. That conversation you keep postponing, the number in your bank account you refuse to check, the health issue you're pretending isn't there, the relationship that's slowly dying, the dream you gave up on, the addiction you won't call an addiction. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That thing that makes your stomach drop when it crosses your mind. So you push it away. You scroll. You stay busy. You tell yourself you'll deal with it later. You convince yourself it's not that bad. You pretend it will just go away on its own. But it won't. This avoidance feels like a strategy for peace. It feels like protection. It feels smart. But it's actually the monster in the basement, and it's getting bigger every day. Because you're feeding it with your silence. Every time you choose not to look, every time you change the subject, every time you distract yourself, you're making it stronger. You're making it more real. You're making it more powerful. And the crazy part is, you think avoiding it is keeping you safe. But avoiding it is what's actually destroying you. The fear is eating you alive from the inside. The uncertainty is worse than any reality could be. The energy you spend not thinking about it is energy stolen from everything else in your life. You wake up every morning with this weight on your chest. You go to bed every night with this knot in your stomach. You're living with this constant background stress that colors everything you do, everything you think, everything you feel. And you wonder why you're tired all the time. You wonder why you can't focus. You wonder why nothing feels quite right. You wonder why you're not happy even when things are going well. It's because you're carrying this thing around with you everywhere you go. This unresolved thing. This unnamed thing. This thing you refuse to face, and it's exhausting. You can't build a better life while you're running from the truth about your current one. You can't move forward while you're looking backward. You can't grow while you're hiding. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge is broken. You're spending so much energy avoiding this one thing that you have no energy left for anything else. No energy for growth. No energy for change. No energy for the life you actually want to live. This is why people stay stuck for years, decades, their whole lives. Not because they can't change, but because they're using all their energy to avoid the one thing that would actually set them free. So here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to name the monster, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when it's convenient. Right now, what is the one thing you've been avoiding? What's the conversation you keep pushing off? What's the reality you refuse to face? I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm just asking you to name it. To look at it, to stop pretending it doesn't exist. Because the truth is this, the fear of the truth is always worse than the truth itself. Always. You've built this thing up in your mind. You've made it bigger than it is. You've convinced yourself that facing it will destroy you. But that's just your fear talking. That's just your imagination running wild. The reality is probably not as bad as you think it is. And even if it is bad, facing it gives you power. Avoiding it leaves you powerless. When you know what you're dealing with, you can deal with it. When you're running from something you can't even name, you're trapped. So let's get specific. Let's get real. Let's stop dancing around it. Is it your health? Have you been ignoring symptoms, skipping doctor visits, pretending that pain will just go away? Have you been telling yourself it's just stress while your body is screaming at you to pay attention? Maybe you found a lump and you haven't gotten it checked. Maybe your blood pressure is high and you keep putting off the follow-up appointment. Maybe you're having chest pains and you're convinced it's just anxiety. Maybe you're drinking too much and everyone can see it except you. Is it your money? Are you avoiding your bank account, not opening bills, living in denial about your debt? Have you been spending money you don't have while telling yourself you'll figure it out later? Maybe you haven't looked at your credit card statement in months. Maybe you're behind on your mortgage and you keep ignoring the calls. Maybe you have no savings and you're one emergency away from disaster. Maybe you're still living paycheck to paycheck at an age when you thought you'd have it figured out. Is it your relationship? Are you pretending everything is fine when it's not? Avoiding the hard conversations, settling for less because you're afraid of being alone? Maybe you know your marriage is over, but you won't say it out loud. Maybe you're in love with someone who doesn't love you back, but you keep hoping. Maybe you're with someone who treats you badly, but you think you don't deserve better. Maybe you've been lying to your partner about something, and the guilt is eating you alive. Is it your career? Are you stuck in a job that's killing your soul? Afraid to take risks? Waiting for permission that will never come? Maybe you've been at the same dead-end job for years, complaining about it but doing nothing to change it. Maybe you have a business idea that could work, but you're too scared to try. Maybe you know you're capable of more, but you've gotten comfortable being mediocre. Maybe you're working for someone who doesn't respect you, and you've stopped respecting yourself. Is it your family? Are there things that need to be said? Boundaries that need to be set? Forgiveness that needs to happen? Maybe you haven't spoken to your parent in years over something that could be resolved with one conversation. Maybe you have a child who's struggling and you don't know how to help them. Maybe there's abuse in your family that everyone pretends isn't happening. Maybe you're taking care of everyone else and neglecting yourself and you're burning out. Is it an addiction? Something you keep saying you'll quit tomorrow? Something that's controlling your life but you won't admit it? Maybe it's alcohol and you can't remember the last day you didn't drink. Maybe it's drugs and you've been lying about being clean. Maybe it's shopping and your closets are full but your bank account is empty. Maybe it's social media and you're living your life through a screen. Maybe it's work and you haven't taken a real break in years. Whatever it is, it has a name, and naming it is the first step to taming it. But here's what most people do wrong. They think facing the truth means they have to fix everything immediately. They think they have to have all the answers. They think they have to be brave enough to handle the whole problem at once. That's not true. Facing the truth just means acknowledging what's real. It means stopping the pretending. It means calling it what it is, and then taking the smallest possible step forward, not the biggest step, not the perfect step, the smallest step. Because here's what happens when you try to do too much too fast. You get overwhelmed, you get scared, you quit. And then you tell yourself you tried, but it didn't work. But you didn't try. You just went too big too fast. Real change happens in small steps. Tiny steps. Steps so small they feel almost pointless. If it's your health, the smallest step might be making one phone call, booking one appointment, looking up one doctor, not changing your entire lifestyle overnight, just making one call. If it's your money, it might be opening one statement, adding up one column of numbers, making one budget line, not creating a perfect financial plan, just looking at one number. If it's a relationship, it might be writing one text, having one honest conversation, setting one boundary, not having the big dramatic talk that fixes everything, just saying one true thing. If it's your career, it might be updating your resume, applying to one job, having one conversation with your boss, not quitting tomorrow and starting your own business, just taking one small step toward change. If it's your family, it might be sending one message, making one phone call, setting one limit, not healing decades of dysfunction in one conversation, just starting with one honest moment. If it's an addiction, it might be admitting it to one person, going to one meeting, getting rid of one thing that triggers you, not getting sober forever starting today, just not using today. The point isn't to solve everything today. The point is to stop avoiding everything today. Because avoidance is not a strategy, it's not protection, it's prison, and you've been locked up long enough. The truth will not destroy you, but continuing to avoid it will. The truth will not ruin your life, but continuing to run from it will. The truth might be uncomfortable, it might be scary, it might require change, but it will also set you free. Because on the other side of that truth is clarity. On the other side of that truth is power. On the other side of that truth is the ability to actually do something about your life. Right now, you're fighting a ghost. You're afraid of something you can't even see clearly. You're running from something that might not even be as bad as you think it is. But when you name it, when you look at it, when you face it, it becomes real. And when it's real, you can deal with it. You can make a plan, you can take action, you can get help, you can move forward, but you can't do any of that while you're still pretending it doesn't exist. You can't fix what you won't face. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. You can't change what you won't admit. So today, you stop running. Today, you turn around. Today, you look the monster in the eye, and you realize it was never as big as you thought it was. You realize you're stronger than you thought you were. You realize the truth isn't your enemy. The truth is your freedom, but you have to choose it. You have to name it. You have to face it right now. Not after you finish reading this. Not after you think about it some more. Not after you feel more ready. Right now. Because ready is not a feeling. Ready is a decision. And you've been waiting long enough. Your life is happening now. Your chance to change is now. Your opportunity to stop avoiding and start living is now. What's the one thing you've been avoiding? What's the truth you've been running from? Say it out loud. Write it down. Tell someone. Do something to make it real. Name it. Face it. Take one small step toward it. Your future self is waiting for you on the other side of that truth. They've been waiting for you to stop being afraid. They've been waiting for you to stop making excuses. They've been waiting for you to stop avoiding and start living. Stop making them wait. The truth is not your enemy. The truth is your way out. Face it today. Chapter 2. Stop lying to yourself about your habits. Want to know why you're stuck in the same place after 90 days, 6 months, even years of trying? Because you're living the biggest lie of all. You think you're trying to change, but your daily actions prove you're trying to stay the same. Your habits are telling the truth about who you really are, and it's time you listened. If you want to rise in 90 days, stop lying about what you actually do every single day. It's the lie of, I'm trying. I used to say I was trying to get healthy while my actions told a completely different story. Late night snacks, skipped workouts, excuses every day. I would tell myself I was being good because I bought vegetables at the grocery store. But those vegetables would rot in my fridge while I ordered takeout. I would tell myself I was working out because I had a gym membership, but I hadn't been there in months. I used to say I was trying to build my business while I spent hours scrolling social media, watching Netflix, doing everything except the work that mattered. I would wake up every morning with big plans. I would make lists. I would set intentions. I would feel motivated and ready. But by the end of the day, nothing important got done. I used to say I was trying to save money while my bank account showed purchase after purchase of things I didn't need. I would promise myself I would stop spending. I would delete shopping apps from my phone. I would make budgets. But then I would see something I wanted, and I would convince myself I needed it. Just this once, just this time, I was lying. Not to anyone else, to myself. And maybe you're doing the same thing right now. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to get in shape while your workout clothes sit unworn in your drawer. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to eat better while your kitchen is full of junk food. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to be more productive while you spend hours on your phone. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to save money while you buy things you don't need. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to build better relationships while you never call your friends. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to learn something new while you watch TV every night. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to be a better parent while you're always distracted. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to be a better partner while you never listen. Maybe you're telling yourself you're trying to be a better person while your actions prove otherwise. Here's the second hard truth. Your life is not defined by your intentions. It is defined by the hard data of your daily actions, not what you want to do, what you actually do, not what you plan to do, what you consistently do, not what you say you're going to do, what you prove you do with your time, your energy, your choices. Your habits are the truth teller. Your calendar is the truth teller. Your bank account is the truth teller. Your results are the truth teller. Everything else is just stories you tell yourself to feel better. And I get it. The stories feel necessary. They protect your ego. They let you believe you're making progress even when you're not. They give you permission to keep doing what you're doing while feeling good about who you think you're becoming. The stories let you feel like a good person while living like someone else. They let you maintain your identity as someone who cares about health while eating garbage. They let you think of yourself as ambitious while wasting time. They let you believe you're responsible while being reckless. But the stories are killing you. Because while you're telling yourself you're trying, time is passing. While you're convincing yourself you're making progress, opportunities are disappearing. While you're living in the gap between your intentions and your actions, your life is happening without you. Years are going by, real years, with real consequences, and you're still telling yourself the same stories. You're still making the same promises to yourself. You're still believing that wanting something is the same as working for it. But it's not. Wanting to be healthy is not the same as being healthy. Wanting to be successful is not the same as being successful. Wanting to be a good person is not the same as being a good person. Your life is not built on wants. Your life is built on what you do every single day. So let's stop talking about who you want to be. Let's get brutally honest about what you actually do. Let's look at the undeniable evidence. What does your calendar say about your priorities? Where does your time actually go, not where you wish it went? Where it actually goes. Look at last week. Where did you spend your time? How many hours did you spend working on things that matter to you? How many hours did you spend scrolling social media? How many hours did you spend watching TV? How many hours did you spend complaining about your life instead of changing it? If you say health is important to you, how many hours did you spend on health this week? Working out, meal prepping, sleeping enough, managing stress? Did you work out 3 times like you planned? Or did you make excuses? Did you eat the foods you said you would eat? Or did you give in every time you felt stressed? Did you get enough sleep? Or did you stay up late doing things that don't matter? If you say your relationships are important, how much time did you spend having real conversations? Being present? Investing in the people you love? Did you put your phone away when your family was talking to you? Did you ask questions about their lives? Did you show up when they needed you? Or were you physically there but mentally somewhere else? If you say your goals are important, how much time did you spend working on them? Actually working, not thinking about working, not planning to work, actually working. Did you write the book you've been talking about for years? Did you apply for the job you want? Did you take the class you've been meaning to take? Did you start the business you've been dreaming about? Or did you just think about it some more? If you say learning is important to you, how many books did you read this month? How many courses did you take? How many new skills did you develop? Or did you spend that time watching videos that taught you nothing? Reading posts that made you feel smart but didn't make you smarter? Consuming content that entertained you but didn't improve you? If you say money is important to you, how much did you save? How much debt did you pay off? How much did you invest in your future? Or did you spend money on things you forgot about a week later? Did you buy things to make yourself feel better? Did you waste money on convenience because you didn't plan ahead? The truth is in the data. And the data doesn't lie. Your bank account doesn't lie about your spending priorities. Your phone screen time doesn't lie about what you're actually focused on. Your body doesn't lie about how you've been treating it. Your relationships don't lie about how much effort you've been putting in. The results in your life right now are the direct consequence of what you do every day, not what you intend to do, what you actually do. And if you don't like your results, you have to change what you do, not what you intend. what you actually do. This isn't about shame. This isn't about beating yourself up. This is about alignment. It's about closing the gap between the person you say you are and the person your actions prove you to be. Because that gap is where all your frustration lives. That gap is where all your anxiety comes from. That gap is where you get stuck. When your actions don't match your values, you feel like a fraud. When your habits don't support your goals, you feel like a failure. When your daily choices don't reflect your priorities, you feel lost. You feel frustrated because you know you're capable of more, but you're not doing more. You feel anxious because you're not living according to your own standards. You feel stuck because you keep promising yourself you'll change, but you never actually change. And the worst part is you start to lose faith in yourself. You stop trusting your own promises. You stop believing you're capable of following through. You start thinking you're just not the kind of person who can change. But that's not true. You're not broken. You're just misaligned. Your problem isn't that you don't want to change. Your problem is that you're trying to change everything at once, instead of changing one thing completely. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can build one proof of life habit that changes everything. One habit that proves to yourself and everyone else that you're serious about who you want to become. Not 10 habits. Not a complete life overhaul. One habit. One habit that you do every single day without exception. One habit that becomes non-negotiable. One habit that becomes who you are. Maybe it's working out for 30 minutes every morning. Every morning, before you check your phone, before you make excuses, before you think about whether you feel like it or not. Maybe it's writing for 1 hour before you do anything else. 1 hour of real writing, not editing yesterday's work, not planning tomorrow's work, writing new words. Maybe it's eating a healthy breakfast. Every day, no matter what, no matter how rushed you are, no matter what's happening in your life. Maybe it's reading for 20 minutes before bed. 20 minutes of real reading. Not scrolling articles, not skimming posts. Reading books that challenge you and change you. Maybe it's calling one person you care about every day. One real conversation. Not texting, not messaging, calling and talking. Maybe it's saving $10 every day. $10 you don't spend on things you don't need. $10 that goes toward your future instead of your impulses. Maybe it's learning something new for 15 minutes every day. 15 minutes of real learning. Taking notes, practicing, growing. It doesn't matter what the habit is. What matters is that you do it every day, without excuse, without negotiation, without exception. Because every time you do it, you're proving something to yourself. You're proving that you're someone who keeps their word. You're proving that you're someone who follows through. You're proving that you're someone who can be trusted to do what they say they're going to do. And that proof changes everything. It changes how you see yourself. It changes how you talk to yourself. It changes what you believe is possible. When you have evidence that you can stick to something, you start believing you can stick to anything. When you prove you can change one thing, you start believing you can change everything. When you build one habit that you never break, you become someone who doesn't break commitments. When you do one thing every day, no matter what, you become someone who does what needs to be done, no matter what. But it has to start with one thing, one habit, one choice you make every single day. And it has to be based on truth, not stories. The truth of what you actually have time for, the truth of what you can actually commit to, the truth of what will actually move your life forward, not the fantasy version where you suddenly become a different person overnight. The realistic version where you become a slightly better person every single day, because that's how real change happens. Not in dramatic moments, in daily moments, not in perfect streaks, in consistent choices. Your life is not going to change because you had one good day. Your life is going to change because you had one good day, then another, then another. Your habits are going to change because you made one good choice, then made it again, then made it again. Your future is going to change because you stopped lying to yourself about your present and started building proof that you're becoming someone different. Someone who does what they say they're going to do. Someone whose actions match their values. Someone who doesn't need motivation because they have systems. But it starts with truth. The truth about what you actually do with your time. The truth about what your habits prove about your priorities. The truth about the gap between who you say you are and who you actually are. Face that truth. Close that gap. Build that proof. One habit, one day, one choice at a time. Your future self is counting on you to stop lying and start living. They're waiting for you to become someone whose actions prove their words. They're waiting for you to build a life that matches your values. They're waiting for you to stop trying and start doing. The time is now. The choice is yours. The truth is waiting. What's the one habit that will prove you're serious about change? Pick it. Start it. Protect it. Start today. Start now. Start with truth. Chapter 3. Accept that some people don't want you to grow. Here's why your 90-day transformation might fail before it even starts. The people closest to you don't want you to succeed. They like you stuck. They need you small. When you start rising, they'll try to pull you back down. And if you don't recognize this truth and protect yourself from it, you'll choose their comfort over your growth and stay stuck forever. This chapter might save your entire transformation. Some of the people closest to you may, consciously or not, try to pull you back to the old version of you. Your growth is a mirror to their stagnation, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. They liked you better when you were stuck, when you were complaining about the same things they complain about, when you were making the same excuses they make, when you were settling for the same mediocrity they've accepted, because when you were stuck, they didn't have to question their own choices. When you were making excuses, they felt justified in making theirs. When you were settling, they felt comfortable settling too. But now you're changing. Now you're growing. Now you're doing something about your life. And suddenly they feel exposed. They feel judged. They feel left behind, even though you're not judging them, even though you're not trying to leave them behind, even though you're just trying to become a better version of yourself. But that doesn't matter, because your growth forces them to confront their own lack of growth. Your progress highlights their lack of progress. Your action exposes their inaction. And instead of being inspired by your change, they feel threatened by it. This is the hard truth we need to face. Some relationships are conditional upon you staying stuck. Some people only love the version of you that makes them feel better about themselves. Some people only support you when you're not doing better than them. Some people only want you to succeed as long as you don't succeed too much. They don't say this out loud. They might not even realize they're doing it. But they are. They do it with subtle comments. You're so different now. You think you're better than us. Remember when you used to be fun? They do it with passive resistance, not showing up when you invite them to something healthy, making jokes about your new habits, rolling their eyes when you talk about your goals. They do it with active sabotage, bringing junk food when you're trying to eat healthy, pressuring you to drink when you're trying to cut back, discouraging you from taking risks when you're trying to grow. They do it with emotional manipulation, making you feel guilty for spending less time with them, making you feel selfish for investing in yourself, making you feel like you're abandoning them by improving yourself. And the worst part is, it works. Because these are people you care about, people you love, people whose opinions matter to you. So you start to second-guess yourself. You start to slow down your progress. You start to shrink back into the old version of yourself just to keep the peace. You stop going to the gym because your friends make fun of it. You stop reading because your family says you're being pretentious. You stop working on your goals because your partner says you're obsessed. You choose their comfort over your growth, their approval over your improvement, their feelings over your future. And you tell yourself you're being considerate. You tell yourself you're being loyal. You tell yourself you're maintaining important relationships. But what you're really doing is sacrificing your potential to avoid conflict. What you're really doing is choosing to stay stuck, to make other people comfortable. What you're really doing is letting other people's limitations become your limitations. And that's not love. That's not friendship. That's not support. Real love celebrates your growth. Real friendship supports your dreams. Real support pushes you to be better, not holds you back from becoming better. The people who truly care about you want you to succeed. They want you to be happy. They want you to reach your potential, even if it means you outgrow some of the things you used to do together. Even if it means you have less in common than you used to. Even if it means they have to step up their own game to keep up with you. But not everyone in your life is capable of that kind of love. Not everyone in your life wants what's best for you. Some people want what's most comfortable for them. And you need to accept that. You need to recognize that. You need to protect yourself from that. This isn't about cutting people out of your life immediately. This isn't about burning bridges or creating drama. This is about recognizing who is a tailwind, pushing you forward, and who is a headwind, holding you back. So let's get clear about who's who in your life. Think about the people you spend the most time with, the people whose opinions matter to you, the people who influence your decisions. When you talk to them about your goals, how do they respond? Do they get excited? Do they ask questions? Do they offer support? Do they celebrate your wins? Or do they change the subject? Do they make jokes? Do they point out the obstacles? Do they remind you of your past failures? When you start making positive changes, how do they react? Do they encourage you? Do they join you? Do they respect your new boundaries? Or do they resist? Do they try to tempt you back to old habits? Do they make you feel guilty for changing? When you succeed at something, how do they respond? Do they celebrate with you? Do they acknowledge your hard work? Do they use your success as motivation for their own growth? Or do they downplay it? Do they attribute it to luck? Do they find ways to bring you back down to their level? Pay attention to these reactions, because they tell you everything you need to know about whether someone supports your growth or fears it. The people who support your growth will ask you about your progress. They'll celebrate your wins, even the small ones. They'll encourage you when you're struggling. They'll respect your new priorities, even if they don't understand them. The people who fear your growth will try to distract you from your goals. They'll minimize your achievements. They'll discourage you when you're struggling. They'll pressure you to abandon your new priorities for their old ones. And once you recognize the difference, you need to create a strategy for managing both types of relationships. For the people who support your growth, lean in. Spend more time with them. Share your goals with them. Ask for their advice. Let them be part of your journey. These are your allies. These are the people who will push you to be better. These are the people who will hold you accountable when you want to quit. These are the people who will celebrate your success without feeling diminished by it. Invest in these relationships. Nurture them. Protect them, because they're rare and valuable. For the people who resist your growth, create boundaries. Not walls, boundaries. You don't have to cut them out of your life completely, but you do have to limit their influence on your decisions. Stop sharing your goals with them if they're going to discourage you. Stop asking for their opinion if they're going to tear you down. Stop letting their comfort dictate your choices. You can still love them. You can still spend time with them, but you can't let them derail your progress. Maybe that means seeing them less often. Maybe that means changing the subject when they start undermining you. Maybe that means being less available when they want to drag you back to old habits. It might feel uncomfortable at first. They might not like it. They might try to make you feel guilty about it. But remember, their discomfort with your growth is their problem, not yours. Their resistance to your change is their issue, not yours. Their inability to support you is their limitation, not yours. You are not responsible for managing other people's feelings about your improvement. You are not obligated to stay small to make other people comfortable. You are not required to sacrifice your future to preserve relationships that depend on your stagnation. And here's what will happen when you start protecting your growth. Some people will adjust. They'll realize that you're serious about changing. They'll start to respect your new boundaries. They might even start to support you. But some people won't. They'll push back harder. They'll escalate their resistance. They'll try to manipulate you back into the old patterns. And that's when you'll know who they really are. That's when you'll see that their relationship with you was conditional on you staying stuck. That's when you'll realize that they never wanted what was best for you. It's painful to realize, but it's also liberating. Because now you know. Now you can stop trying to get support from people who are incapable of giving it. Now you can stop wasting energy on relationships that drain you instead of fuel you. You can focus your time and energy on the people who actually want you to succeed, the people who celebrate your wins, the people who push you to be better. And you can find new people who match your new energy, people who are also growing, people who are also changing, people who understand what you're trying to do because they're trying to do it too. This might mean joining new communities, going to new places, trying new activities, meeting new people who share your values and your commitment to growth. It might mean being alone more than you're used to. It might mean feeling lonely sometimes, as you outgrow old relationships and build new ones. But that temporary loneliness is better than permanent stagnation. That temporary discomfort is better than a lifetime of staying stuck to keep other people happy. Because here's the truth, the people who truly belong in your life will grow with you. They'll be inspired by your change. They'll want to become better because you're becoming better. And the people who don't belong in your life will reveal themselves through their resistance to your growth. They'll show you that they prefer you stuck. They'll prove that they're more invested in their comfort than your success. Accept both realities. Embrace the people who support you. Set boundaries with the people who don't. Your growth is not up for debate. Your improvement is not up for vote. Your future is not dependent on other people's approval. Some people don't want you to grow. Accept that. Protect yourself from that, and grow anyway. Chapter 4. Accept your starting point without excuses. You want to rise in 90 days, but you're still blaming your circumstances from years ago. You're still making excuses based on what happened to you. Stop. Start focusing on what you're going to do about it. Your past was not your fault, but your future is 100% your responsibility. Until you accept where you are without excuses, you'll never get where you want to go. That's a fact. You may have had fewer opportunities than others. You may have experienced more trauma. You may have been dealt a tougher hand. You may have started from a place of disadvantage that others never had to face. Maybe you grew up poor, while others grew up rich. Maybe you had parents who didn't support your dreams, while others had parents who invested in theirs. Maybe you faced discrimination that others never experienced. Maybe you dealt with mental health issues that others don't understand. Maybe you were abused as a child. Maybe you were neglected. Maybe you were told you weren't good enough. Maybe you were taught to settle for less. Maybe you learned to expect disappointment. Maybe you didn't get the education others got. Maybe you didn't have the connections others had. Maybe you didn't get the breaks others received. Maybe you had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Acknowledging that pain is valid. Recognizing that unfairness is real. Admitting that some people start with advantages you never had is honest. But using it as a permanent excuse for inaction is a prison you build for yourself. I spent years blaming my circumstances. Years explaining why I couldn't succeed because of where I came from. Years using my difficult past as justification for my mediocre present. And all it did was make me feel powerless. All it did was keep me stuck. All it did was rob me of my agency and my ability to change my life. Because here's the fourth hard truth. While your past may not be your fault, your future is 100% your responsibility. 100%, not 90%, not 50%, 100%. What happened to you was not your choice, but what you do about it is completely your choice. The cards you were dealt were not up to you, but how you play those cards is entirely up to you. The starting line you began from was not your decision, but the finish line you cross will be determined by your decisions from this moment forward. This isn't about denying your pain. This isn't about pretending your struggles don't matter. This isn't about toxic positivity or fake motivation. This is about radical ownership. This is about taking complete responsibility for your life from this moment forward. This is about refusing to let your past determine your future. Because blame is a luxury you can't afford if you want to change your life. Resentment is a poison you drink while expecting other people to suffer. Victimhood is a story that keeps you powerless while making you feel justified in that powerlessness. And I get it. Blame feels good. It feels righteous. It feels like justice. It absolves you of responsibility while making someone else the villain. But it also absolves you of power. It takes away your ability to change anything. It makes you dependent on other people changing for your life to get better. And other people aren't going to change. Your parents aren't going to suddenly become different parents. Your ex isn't going to undo the damage they caused. Your boss isn't going to retroactively treat you fairly. Society isn't going to fix all the injustices you've experienced. So you can spend your life waiting for apologies that will never come. You can spend your energy demanding justice that may never arrive. You can spend your time explaining why your circumstances make success impossible. Or you can accept your starting point without excuses and start building from where you are. Not from where you wish you were. Not from where you think you should be. From where you actually are, right now, today. With whatever resources you have, with whatever advantages and disadvantages you were given, with whatever challenges you face, with whatever limitations you have to work around. Because everyone starts somewhere, and no one gets to choose their starting point. Some people start on third base and act like they hit a triple. Some people start in the batter's box with 2 strikes already against them. Some people start so far back they can't even see the field. But everyone who succeeds does the same thing. They stop focusing on their starting point and start focusing on their next step. They stop comparing their beginning to other people's middle. They stop using their disadvantages as excuses. They stop waiting for perfect conditions or fair circumstances. They take inventory of what they have. They assess their situation honestly. They identify their resources and their limitations. And then they make a plan to move forward from exactly where they are. So let's do that right now. Let's perform a clear-eyed assessment of your situation. Let's inventory the real cards you've been dealt, the good and the bad, without blame or complaint. Not so you can make excuses. So you can make plans. What resources do you actually have? Not the resources you wish you had. The resources you actually have. Maybe you don't have money, but you have time. Maybe you don't have connections, but you have skills. Maybe you don't have advantages, but you have hunger. Maybe you don't have support, but you have determination. Maybe you have access to the internet, which means you have access to more information and opportunities than most people in human history ever had. Maybe you have a library card, which means you have access to thousands of books written by the smartest people who ever lived. Maybe you have a smartphone, which means you have a computer more powerful than what sent humans to the moon. Maybe you have your health, which means you can work. Maybe you have your mind, which means you can learn. Maybe you have your voice, which means you can communicate. Maybe you have your hands, which means you can create. What skills do you have? Not the skills you wish you had, the skills you actually have. Maybe you're good with people. Maybe you're good with numbers. Maybe you're good with words. Maybe you're good with your hands. Maybe you're good at solving problems. Maybe you're good at seeing patterns others miss. Maybe you've learned things from your difficult experiences that others haven't learned. Maybe your struggles have given you empathy. Maybe your challenges have given you resilience. Maybe your setbacks have given you perspective. What opportunities are available to you? Not the opportunities you wish were available. The opportunities that actually exist. Maybe there are jobs you could apply for. Maybe there are classes you could take. Maybe there are people you could meet. Maybe there are skills you could learn. Maybe there are services you could provide. Maybe there are problems you could solve. Maybe there are free resources you haven't used. Maybe there are programs you haven't applied for. Maybe there are communities you haven't joined. Maybe there are mentors you haven't reached out to. Maybe you have less money than you need. Maybe you have more responsibilities than others. Maybe you have health issues that slow you down. Maybe you have family obligations that limit you. And yes, let's also be honest about the challenges you face. The real obstacles. The legitimate barriers. The things that make your journey more difficult than others. Your time. Maybe you live in an area with fewer opportunities. Maybe you face discrimination that others don't face. Maybe you have trauma that affects your ability to function. Maybe you have learning differences that make traditional paths harder. Maybe you have mental health challenges that complicate everything. Acknowledge all of it. The advantages and the disadvantages, the resources and the limitations, the opportunities and the obstacles. But don't let any of it become your excuse for not trying. Because here's what successful people understand. Everyone has obstacles. Everyone has challenges. Everyone has reasons they could use to justify giving up. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't the presence or absence of obstacles. It's what they do with the obstacles they have. Some people use their obstacles as excuses. Some people use their obstacles as fuel. Some people focus on what they don't have. Some people focus on what they can do with what they do have. Some people wait for their circumstances to improve. Some people improve their circumstances with the resources they currently possess. You get to choose which type of person you become. You can choose to focus on all the reasons why your journey is harder than others. All the ways you were disadvantaged, all the opportunities you didn't get, all the support you didn't receive. Or you can choose to focus on what you can control from this moment forward, what you can do with what you have, what steps you can take from where you are. You can choose to tell the story of why you can't, or you can choose to build the strategy for how you will. Because your story matters less than your strategy. Your past matters less than your plan. Your starting point matters less than your next point. Where you came from is not as important as where you're going. What happened to you is not as important as what you do next. What you were given is not as important as what you do with what you were given. This is not about pretending your challenges don't exist. This is about refusing to let your challenges define what's possible for you. This is not about denying the unfairness you've experienced. This is about refusing to let unfairness determine your future. This is not about being grateful for trauma or pretending disadvantages are advantages. This is about taking complete ownership of your response to everything you've been through. Because your response is the only thing you can control. Your response is the only thing that determines what happens next. Your response is the only thing that matters for your future. So stop explaining why you can't and start planning how you will. Stop listing all the reasons your goals are impossible and start identifying all the ways they might be possible. Stop focusing on what you don't have and start maximizing what you do have. Accept your starting point. All of it. The good and the bad, the fair and the unfair, the advantages and the disadvantages. And then start building from exactly where you are, with exactly what you have. Starting exactly now. Your future is waiting. And it doesn't care about your excuses. It only cares about your actions. Chapter 5. Choose reality. Over the stories you tell yourself. If you've been stuck in the same patterns for years, it's probably because you're not living in reality. You're living in the dramatic stories your mind creates about reality. Your anxiety isn't caused by what's actually happening. It's caused by what you think is happening. In the next 90 days, you can rise above all that mental chaos by learning this one skill: separating facts from the fear-based fiction your mind creates. Most of the stories it tells you are lies. Not intentional lies, not malicious lies, but lies nonetheless. Stories designed to protect you from danger that doesn't exist. Stories meant to prepare you for disasters that will never happen. Stories created to explain situations that don't need explaining. When you get rejected, your mind instantly writes a story. I'm not good enough. I'll never find someone who loves me. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. When you face uncertainty, it writes another story. Everything is going to fall apart. I can't handle this. This is the beginning of the end. When someone doesn't text you back, it creates drama. They hate me. I said something wrong. This relationship is over. When you make a mistake at work, it writes tragedy. I'm going to get fired. Everyone thinks I'm incompetent. My career is ruined. When you feel uncomfortable in your body, it spins catastrophe. I'm dying. Something is seriously wrong with me. This pain will never go away. Your mind takes simple facts and turns them into complex emotional narratives. It takes neutral events and makes them personal attacks. It takes temporary setbacks and makes them permanent failures. And you believe these stories. You live in these stories. You make decisions based on these stories. Even though most of them aren't true, here's the final and most powerful truth we need to confront. Almost all of your suffering comes not from reality itself, but from the stories you tell yourself about reality. Not from what actually happens, from what you think it means. Not from the facts, from your interpretation of the facts. Not from the situation, from the story your mind creates about the situation. Think about the last time you were really upset about something, really stressed, really anxious, really hurt. What actually happened? What were the bare facts? What could someone else observe if they were watching your life like a movie? And then what story did your mind tell you about those facts? What meaning did it assign? What future did it predict? What conclusions did it draw? I guarantee you the story was more painful than the facts. The facts might have been your boss criticized your work, your partner seemed distant, your friend didn't call you back, you didn't get the job you wanted. But the story your mind told was, you're a failure, you're unloved, you're forgotten, you're not good enough. The facts were temporary and specific. The story was permanent and global. The facts were about one situation. The story was about your entire worth as a human being. The facts were manageable. The story was overwhelming. This is what your mind does. It takes data and turns it into drama. It takes information and turns it into interpretation. It takes events and turns them into evidence of your deepest fears. And the crazy part is, you don't even realize it's happening. The story feels like reality. The interpretation feels like fact. The narrative feels like truth, but it's not. It's just one possible explanation for what happened. One possible meaning you could assign. One possible story you could tell. There are always other stories, better stories, more accurate stories, stories that serve you instead of sabotaging you. When your boss criticizes your work, the story could be, they're helping me improve. When your partner seems distant, it could be, they're dealing with their own stress. When your friend doesn't call back, it could be, they're busy with their own life. When you don't get the job, it could be, something better is coming. These aren't naive, positive thinking stories. These are just different interpretations of the same facts. Different meanings assigned to the same events. Different narratives about the same reality. And they're just as valid as the negative stories your mind automatically creates. Maybe more valid. Because here's what I've learned. Your mind's default stories are almost always wrong. They're based on fear, not facts. They're designed for survival, not success. They assume the worst to protect you from disappointment. Your mind thinks its job is to keep you safe. So it prepares you for every possible threat. It imagines every potential disaster. It creates worst-case scenarios so you won't be surprised if they happen. But most of those scenarios never happen. Most of those threats aren't real. Most of those disasters are just stories. And while your mind is busy protecting you from imaginary dangers, you're suffering from very real anxiety, very real stress, very real fear. You're living in a prison built from stories that aren't true. So how do you escape? How do you separate reality from the narratives your mind creates about reality? You learn to deconstruct your emotional stories down to their raw, observable facts. This is the ultimate skill for mental peace. Learning to see the world as it actually is, not just as your fear narrates it to be. Here's how it works. The next time you're upset about something, stop and ask yourself, what actually happened here? Not what you think it means, not what you're afraid it might lead to, not what story your mind is telling you about it. What actually literally observably happened? If someone else was watching your life like a security camera, what would they see? What would they hear? What could they record as objective fact? Let's say you're anxious because your romantic partner has been acting weird lately. What does acting weird actually mean? What specific behaviors have you observed? Maybe they've been on their phone more. Maybe they've been working late. Maybe they've seemed tired when they get home. Maybe they haven't initiated physical intimacy as much as usual. Those are facts. Observable behaviors. Things that actually happened. Now, what story has your mind created about those facts? Probably something like, they're losing interest in me. They're cheating on me. They want to break up. Our relationship is falling apart. But notice, none of those conclusions are facts. They're interpretations, they're stories, they're possibilities, not certainties. There are many other stories that could explain the same facts. Maybe they're stressed about work. Maybe they're dealing with a family issue they haven't told you about yet. Maybe they're planning a surprise for you. Maybe they're going through a difficult time and don't know how to talk about it. Maybe it has nothing to do with you at all. The point isn't to convince yourself that everything is fine. The point is to recognize that you don't actually know what's going on. You only know what you've observed. Everything else is speculation, and speculation isn't worth suffering over. Here's another example. You're stressed because you think you're behind in life. What does behind in life actually mean? Compared to what? Based on whose timeline? Maybe the facts are, you're 35 and not married. You don't own a house. You're still figuring out your career. You don't have kids yet. Those are circumstances, neutral facts about your current situation. But the story your mind tells is, everyone else has it figured out. I'm a failure. I've wasted my life. It's too late for me. I'll never catch up. Again, none of those are facts. They're interpretations based on comparisons to imaginary standards and other people's highlight reels. The reality might be, you're exactly where you need to be. You're learning important things about yourself. You're avoiding mistakes that rushing would cause. You're building something meaningful at your own pace, or maybe you are behind in some areas. So what? That's information, not judgment. That's data, not drama. If you want to change your situation, you can work on changing it. But you don't have to torture yourself with stories about what it means or what other people will think. This practice of separating facts from stories isn't about denying your emotions or pretending problems don't exist. It's about responding to actual problems instead of imaginary ones. It's about dealing with real challenges instead of fictional catastrophes. It's about addressing what is instead of what might be or what you fear could happen. Because when you're responding to stories instead of facts, you're wasting energy on problems that don't exist. You're solving for scenarios that haven't happened. You're fighting battles that are only in your head. That energy could be used to address the actual situation, to gather more information, to have real conversations, to take constructive action. But instead, you're paralyzed by narratives that may be completely false. So practice this separation. Make it a habit. When you notice yourself getting upset, ask, what are the facts here? When you catch yourself catastrophizing, ask, what story am I telling myself? When you feel overwhelmed by a situation, ask, what do I actually know for certain? Write it down if you have to. Create 2 columns, facts in one column, stories in the other. You'll be amazed at how much of your suffering lives in the stories column. You'll be amazed at how manageable the facts column usually is. You'll be amazed at how much mental energy you get back when you stop fighting imaginary battles. This doesn't mean you become naive or unprepared. This doesn't mean you ignore red flags or dismiss your intuition. This means you base your responses on reality instead of fantasy. This means you address actual problems instead of potential ones. This means you live in the present instead of in your fears about the future. Your mind will always be a storyteller. That's its job. But you don't have to believe every story it tells. You can listen to the story, acknowledge it, and then ask, is this helping me or hurting me? Is this story motivating me to take positive action? Or is it paralyzing me with fear? Is this story based on evidence, or is it based on anxiety? Is this story serving my growth, or is it keeping me stuck? You get to choose which stories you believe. You get to choose which narratives you live by. You get to choose whether you respond to reality or to your interpretation of reality. Choose reality. Choose facts over fiction. Choose what is over what might be. Choose observable truth over emotional drama. Your peace of mind depends on it. Your mental health depends on it. Your ability to respond effectively to life depends on it, because when you stop living in your stories and start living in reality, you discover something remarkable. Reality is usually much more manageable than your fears. Reality is specific and limited. Stories are vague and endless. Reality has solutions. Stories only have suffering. Reality you can work with. Stories you can only worry about. So practice seeing clearly. Practice separating facts from interpretations. Practice choosing reality over the stories your mind creates about reality. This is the ultimate skill for mental freedom. This is how you stop being a prisoner of your own thoughts. This is how you find peace in an uncertain world. Not by controlling what happens to you, by controlling how you interpret what happens to you. Not by avoiding all problems, by responding to real problems instead of imaginary ones. Not by silencing your mind, by questioning the stories it tells. Your mind is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. Use it to see clearly, not to create confusion. Use it to solve problems, not to create them. Use it to understand reality, not to escape from it. The truth will set you free. But first, you have to separate the truth from all the stories that masquerade as truth. Start today. Start now. Start with one simple question. What actually happened here? The answer might surprise you, and it will definitely free you.